Hello, comic book junkies. It's the Frog Queen here, and today I'm bringing you a very special comic book creator interview with Sebastian Girner, who is the writer for the awesome Image comic series called Scales and Scoundrels. I always say it backwards, but it's Scales and Scoundrels. God, now I'm saying it wrong again. Anyway, also has written the wonderful and popular series called Shirtless Bear Fighter, which you've probably seen if you pay any attention to Image Comics, which I think most of us do. Without me going on and on like I am now, let's just skip right to the interview, shall we? Thank you so much for coming on the show. We wanted to talk about the trade of Scales and Scoundrels that just came out.
That's right.
It's coming out this week, or did it just come out?
It's out. It's out as of last Tuesday, February 13th. It's out in bookstores and Amazon and comic book stores, so it's everywhere now.
Awesome. And issue number 6 just came out, right?
Issue 6 came out alongside the trade, and issue 7 is off to the printer. As of last week. That'll be out March 7th. And Galad, the artist, illustrator, just finished issue 10. So we're zooming right ahead, yeah.
And it's an ongoing, right?
It is an ongoing, as long as we can keep it going. We have, we have our milestones, we have our ending in sight, but we, can stretch that really far, and hopefully we'll be able to. We have a lot of stories. Like every issue we finish, we splits off 4 more ideas that we can. I mean, it's a common thread, but I think that especially in fantasy and especially with the world and characters that we've kind of created, we're not going to be at a loss for ideas anytime soon. So it's obviously a question of corralling them, making the best ones stick. But also, the more people read it and the better it does. And I think with long-going comic series, that after 4 or 5 trades, the snowball momentum tends to have built to the point where you can kind of look ahead and see how far you can stretch it. But hopefully we'll be able to do this for a long time.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I love it. I just finished reading issue 6 this morning. And I was really sad at the end of the first trade, actually.
Yeah.
I was like, no. And I just bought it for my niece. And I was like, oh, I should have picked up issue 6 to go with it. So that she's not heartbroken. After reading trade 1, right?
It's true. It's it was a conscious decision. It just felt, I don't know. I mean, I guess it begets the question of it is an all ages or all readers, as we try to call it, book.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, when I was, how old is your niece?
I have actually 2. They're 8. They're twins.
Oh, that's great.
But I got this one for my 12-year-old niece.
Okay, that's good.
I have a lot of nieces.
Yeah, 8. I mean, there's very smart 8-year-olds, and we're trying to write the book where literally anyone can pick it up and get something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think 10 to 12 is probably around the age that I would just assume that it might strike an interest. I tended to have my heart broken a little bit around that age, from stories, and you really get it, you get really into worlds, and but I also don't we're really trying. Because I'm not, all the work I've edited and most of the comics I've worked on over my 10 years in comics now are it's adult, mature reader stuff. And I never considered or really thought about, diving into something like Scales and Scoundrels, something more all ages. But when I started working with Galad and we started doing it, it kind of felt very natural. I started dipping into some of the stuff that I read as a kid growing up. Which is really enjoyable, stuff like Asterix and Tintin and Dragon Ball, and comics that are skewed younger but are just wonderful masterpieces and great fun. And I remember my parents reading them and laughing at them as well. But I'm really trying hard to not make it feel like a kid's comic. I want it to be something that if a mom comes into a comic book store and is like, "What can I get my kids?" that the comic book store staff can unequivocally recommend Scales because it looks fun and it's great and it's colorful characters and it's really lighthearted. But then when you get into it, that it actually delivers some good meat and potato storytelling, and that means occasionally dipping your toes into the odd tragedy or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, I really like it. I'm 35, so I think that it really does appeal to a mass audience, and that's what I really liked about it. Apart from the artwork just being beautiful, is gorgeous. Um, the storytelling it's really good pace, is well paced. Like at no point was I bored. It's a page turner, you know. And like I said, it had that bit of heartbreak, but I really enjoyed the dynamic between the characters. It's Prince Aki, I think, is my favorite character of all time right now.
He's great. He came very, I don't know, naturally. He's just like, obviously we're playing a little bit with the like classic, like fantasy paradigms that tend to either be like overtly heroic or overtly like kind of prickish, or like they're just too like Prince Charmings. Like there's never just like just a guy. He's just okay. Just happens to be a prince. He's not super stoked with it, but he understands that it's a responsibility that he has, and he's trying to live up to it. But also, like, all of our characters are pretty young. A lot of them, actually, all of our main characters kind of come from some tradition or some culture where they're born into a position where certain expectations are hoisted on them. And I think it's really interesting to just generational dynamics, explore how that might not be what they want out of their life, and how you can you come running up against your culture or your parents. Very often, I think that's something people can relate to. Oops. So yeah, I was surprised to find out how, like, when I started writing him, like, how pleasant he is.
He's so positive and
He's a very
jovial.
pleasant person, yeah, which is really fun to write.
But he's not a jerk, because, like you said, like, it's so stereotypical in that kind of fantasy story to make the prince kind of an overconfident jerk.
Yeah.
But he's not like that at all.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
he's very fun.
And to kind of relay the like standoffishness to his bodyguard, to Cora, because she, I feel, has more reason, to be worried about his honor and his good name, because it all, literally, because she's his shadow, projects back onto her, and she has much less control over over him. I mean, she does have a lot of influence on him, of course. So yeah, I mean, that was really fun for me to discover as a writer. This is only the second. I've written a couple of small things, but like this is like a big proper image title creator owned with an artist who co-created it, and it was an ongoing. And as we started working on it, like it did when we started. The spark kind of ignited around a sketch that Galad did of Luvandra, the main character. And then as I was toying around with her and her story, all of which is still a little bit mysterious, so I can't talk too much about it.
Yeah,
it became very clear that we needed, it can't just be her, because we would have to like have the first 2 issues just be exposition dumps, and I really feel that that's not fun. There are comics that, like, if you have a 5-issue mini or a 10-issue mini, like, it might be that your first issue is just, you're kind of running up against where the narrative meets the structure of how you can actually convey a story. So we were like, let's not do that. Let's just like throw the reader in the deep end and just go on an adventure and have fun. Like, how crazy is that? But then you obviously want to find out stuff. So the only natural way to do that is to like kind of put her in with a crew, again, for which there's like fantasy, precedent, going on a party and going into a dungeon, all that stuff that we love. But then I very quickly found myself writing what is essentially like a team book, where you have dynamics firing up against each other. And from working at Marvel as an editor, I remember like team books, interesting slip there, tend to be, they can be very tricky, because you're dealing with, not just one set of expectations and emotions and character dynamics, but like a whole slew. So I was a little trepidatious about it, but then the further we got into it, the more fun it is. And now we're coming out the other side of that first big arc, and I'm like, oh, I love all these characters. They're so fun, and trying to find ways to like get them, to reconnect in the future and stuff like that. So it's cool. It's really fun when that happens, when the characters kind of do the work for you.
And I really appreciate like how much, like you said, like they've got this, all the characters come from a really diverse background. And I like that, because I like fantasy, you can kind of pick pieces and focus on that piece of a character. Like, you know, if the series does go on for a long time, and I hope it does, then, you know, we would get to learn more and more about these very intricate cultures that we get little pieces of here and there.
Yeah, a lot of fun of the first arc was taking the 4 characters that, you know, are kind of from all over the place and locking them in the dungeon in Den of Luin that is foreign to all of them. So they all know their part of the world. Like Aki and Koro come from the Scarlet Sands. Dorma comes from a burrow that she kind of, you know, ran away from because she's not really into the whole living underground thing. And Lu came from wherever she came from, wandered in. But they're all in this weird, you know, ancient labyrinth that, you know, has been home to, you know, generations of other races and other dynasties and kingdoms. And the deeper you kind of peel away the layer, the weirder it gets. But at some point, they're all going to be going back into the world, you know, with what they've now learned and take that back. But it was fun to, like, hint at all of these little places without having to immediately then, like, give readers, like, a full issue of adventure in that place. To just like hint at it. And I think a lot of fun of fantasy for me, you know, growing up reading it is like the places stay with you and you can kind of imagine your own little adventures in them. So I know a lot of people after the first issue were like, oh, the first town is awesome. Like that, you know, that everyone loves that shot where she's standing on the rooftop because we're kind of hinting at this whole big world out there, which was great. But then they were like, yeah, why didn't she stay in that town and have adventures there? Like, I never thought about that. But it's a cool town. I mean, like, maybe we might go back there or you might stay there. But a big part of me about fantasy is like alluding to adventures, showing people a big world and then just kind of, you know, making your way. But, you know, readers are happy to stick around and do their own stories and imagine what life is like. But we'll be seeing a lot more of it. I'm writing issues 11 and 12 right now, which are going to be Dorma standalones, where she has to go home for a bit, and we'll see a little bit more about where she comes from. Hopefully that'll inform, you know, readers on who she is. And then we're planning a really big arc in the Scarlet Sands, which will probably be the 4th arc, which I'm really, really excited to write. Because that's one I've been like waiting to write. Like the story for why we go there has been around for like almost since the start, and I keep trying to like move it forward, but it just naturally I think has to happen. I think when it does, it'll be really cool. Like a lot can't wait to draw that.
Nice. And there's really been no break in the story for you as far as publications. You've been putting out an issue a month now for 6 months straight. Do you think that you'll keep up with that pace? I mean, it's so nice to see that pace. I love it, but yes. I've been let down so many times.
It's true. It's definitely like a lot of I both like almost philosophically believe that comics should be out as often as possible. We're writing it, we're creating it in a way that will facilitate, you know, a monthly schedule. The first, you know, 5 or 6 issues are all like 24 or more pages. I think we had 26. Issue 7 is coming out as 28 pages, so that's
okay.
A big one. We don't even have a letters page in that one, but that's cover to cover. But that's, you know, because we wanted to establish it, we want to get out the gate swinging, we needed some room. I think we're going to start, you know, finding our level, and I think we're definitely going to have an issue every month of 2018.
Awesome.
The second trade paperback, Volume 2, is going to be out in July, alongside issue 11. And then we'll have the third trade paperback, knock on wood, out in December.
Awesome.
So 2018 will have had 3 trades out, which is probably like going to be the busiest year for us. After that, we'll see. I think that we want to stick as close to a monthly schedule as possible. We might, you know, have to take a month off, or maybe even if we just don't ship the issue of the following arc alongside the trade paperback, that'll buy us a month. And Galad is I don't know, he's like a unicorn. He's brilliant. He's super fast. He's super organized, hardworking. I'm trying to write ahead of him so I can always kind of, you know, see problems coming.
Right.
But anyway, long story short, we're definitely like the editorial side of me is like I'm very picky about having a monthly comic. Like, it really bothers me to have to bump a book. I know it happens, and you're always kind of fighting the artistic versus production schedule. You know, like, obviously you want a comic to have as much time to become as beautiful and as perfect as you want. But I also find that comics are an art form that is very much, you know, defined by the fact that it's constraints, it's limitations. You're always constrained by time, usually by money. So what you can with what you have, and you know, because I think you have to, honestly. Also, there's so many comics out right now. Even if you just read like creator-owned independent comics, you have a huge amount and a huge breadth of comics to choose from. And I don't want to assume that my readers will wait for us. Our readers will wait for us. So we really want to make it as easy as possible to pick up, and also to just
to count on.
Yeah, but also, like, it's fun. Like, I like the idea of someone really looking forward to, you know, just having a little bit of certainty. Like, every first Wednesday of the month, you get a new Scales and Scoundrels. You can look forward to it. You know, you can start chatting it up, and it becomes something you can count on. And I think that's a way, you know, also for us as creators to, like, kind of, you know, ingratiate ourselves with our audience, so that they know that, oh, you know, these guys, you know, take it seriously. Hopefully.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wanted to ask you how you met. Is it Galad? Am I saying that right? Galad. Yeah. He's French, correct?
He's correct. Galad is French. He's an animator, and a storyboard artist, and a concept artist by trade.
Which comes across like completely in his work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you 100% see that.
Yeah. And there's a lot. I mean, it's crazy how, because especially as an animator, like, they're so fast, but they have such an, like, just ingrained sense of story and of emotion as well. Also, like, just his designs and, like, all the work he does on costume design and clothing and backgrounds and all the little details that he, you know, kind of brings to life. It's perfect for a fantasy world. He reached out to me kind of out of the blue. I made a website like 2 years ago for, you know, when I went full-time freelance. I was like, I need to be online, like I've heard people do. Yeah. And I have a contact form there, and, you know, people write in and ask questions and stuff, and it's fun. But it's never been like a huge part of my day-to-day business. But he reached out. Well, I guess before that, I was interviewed by a French magazine about editing comics, about being, you know, a freelance editor. And it's that was like apparently it was a pretty big, like, I don't know, it's like a comparable, like, IGN or Newsarama or something, like a, you know, fairly frequented site. So he must have seen that. He reached out to me and was just like, hey, I'm an animator. I'm kind of interested in getting into comics. Could you, like, help me out? And we chatted a little bit, and then got to the point where he was like, hey, do you want to write something with me? And I was like, yes, absolutely. Like, that's an amazing offer. And then we started, you know, kind of just shooting emails back and forth. It took a while, took a couple of months before we had, you know, our concept to the point where we felt comfortable with pitching. We had just like wrapped work on Shirtless Bear Fighter, the other book that I co-wrote. So I had just gotten through the whole pitch process, getting a book, kind of, you know, getting the production schedule up and running. So I, like, was still, you know, like, in the back of my mind. So it was probably a little bit easier the second time around, just because I knew the steps that we had to do and the form that a pitch should take and all that stuff. And then we started working. I mean, we, going back to the monthly schedule, we, like, very consciously gave ourselves a lot of time. So Image traditionally like wants around 3 issues done before they'll solicit the first, just to make sure that the first 5 can ship on time, and then you have a little bit of lead time that if you stay ahead, you know, a book can ship regularly. And I think we had, like, the whole first arc done before the first issue even came out, just because I knew that I didn't want to take breaks between arcs. I wanted to really, you know, kind of hit the ground running. It took a little bit longer, but in between that, I think we just passed our 2-year like work anniversary together last November. So it's been honestly not that long to, like, have a trade out and have, you know, 2 more trades in planning. So yeah, it was complete out of the blue. Like, if anyone ever is, like, self-conscious about reaching out to creators online, I did not know the lot, and you know, it was a complete, like, shot in the dark, and it worked out perfectly because now we have a book that we love working on, and that is like a huge source of like joy and creativity in our lives. So it's always worth it giving it a shot.
That's wicked. Yeah, I always find it so interesting how creators, meet and decide to create something together, like how the collaboration process happens, because it's always unique. Everybody has a different collaboration story, and it's kind of my favorite thing to learn about.
Well, especially the first kind of one that you break in with. I mean, the comic community is both really vast and large, but it's also small. Like, if you're into comics, if you read comics pretty regularly, if you're in the store even just once or twice a month, you're going to see names popping up, people dipping in and out, artists and writers dipping in and out of stints at Marvel or DC or Boom. Then they have their creator-owned series, and there's tons of publishers for all of that. It is a little like inside baseball at a point. So I guess from the outside of someone looking in, it'll seem like it's just like the same 100 or so people recycling and working with each other. But there's always new people coming in. There's always new artists. There's always new. I mean, especially for artists, it's like if you break in with a style that is, professional but also popular or different or unique, you'll very quickly find like people knocking on your door, being like, "Work here, work there." So but there's never one like secret for breaking in. It's just complete. I think for the like you said, a lot of it is just chaos and luck and perseverance, I guess.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you. You had both edited books at Image and Marvel, correct? Yeah. Because I think you had worked on Southern Bastards, was it?
Yeah, I still edit Southern Bastards.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, going back, I started as an assistant editor at Marvel in 2008. I was there for about almost 4 years, and then in that time, I worked with a lot of the people I work with now. I met Rick Remender and Jerome Pena. I worked with on their run on Punisher, and so I met them. I edited Jason Aaron's run on Punisher Max. I worked with him on Ghost Rider. So like you as an editor, especially at Marvel or DC, where you have like sometimes dozens of books that you're working on or assisting on, you're working with a lot of people. And because work for hire creators very often only ever hear from the editor, they're only like kind of linked into and out of the company.
Right.
Those relationships can be close, and you're just like pretty much constantly talking to these people, like more than friends and family sometimes. So when I left Marvel to kind of try to do some other stuff, that was right around the time that this Image boom was resurging. I think East of West had just like broken the record for like issues shipped from a creator-owned comic, and everyone was kind of looking over at like Image started looking real sexy again. At the same time, I think you had this like Venn diagram overlapping of like Image, just like creator-owned comics becoming just financially more viable. Like you could make more short, middle, and long-term gains by doing a creator-owned book, as opposed to like shackling yourself to the wheel of pain at Marvel or DC. But also that Marvel and DC had like gone through their loops so often that a lot of creators were just kind of tired a little bit of doing the same old relaunch year after year. Not that anything's changed; it's always going to be that way. But you just had like a culmination. So all of a sudden, there were like a lot of creator-owned books were shooting out of the ground. And first, Rick called me and was like, "Hey, we work well together. I'm interested in doing this, but I'm also still, he was still working at Marvel, still writing books. It would be good to have an editor for creator-owned book, which people had done before, but it's not super common because obviously the whole point of Image is like that you're free and that you do your own thing."
Right.
But also editors just do like a lot of the busy work, like the production schedule and just like holding everyone's feet to the fire and making sure a book can come out, on time, on schedule. So I was doing a day job. I was working at a travel magazine, and all of a sudden I was like freelance editing comics again. And then the Jasons called, Jason Aaron Latour for Southern Bastards, and then slingshotting out of that, all of a sudden I was just like, my name was on a bunch of books, so people reached out and asked me if I wanted to work with them, and that way I got so many gigs that I actually quit that freelance job and went back into freelance editing full time from home now, which was a first for me. And that's been going on for like 6 years now. So, and then about 2 or 3 years ago, we started working on Shirtless Bear Fighter, and then Scales and Scoundrels. So now I'm like writing and editing, and it's all like, there's no, like, I could not have planned for this. Like, it's all just complete happenstance. I'm just constantly like, I don't know what's going on. I've been doing it for long enough now that I feel like maybe it's not an accident. Like maybe I moderately know what I'm doing, but it's really exciting because like I'm finally doing, you know, the job that I actually wanted, which is like editing, helping, you know, working with other creators and writers and artists and helping them like crystallize and tell, you know, their story, their vision, but then also having, you know, this other little corner of things where I can do my own stuff and just, you know, work on ideas that fascinate me, and I think it's helping me. I think writing is helping me be a better editor and vice versa. So.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's what my next question was going to be, is like, how do you feel that being an editor has changed your writing? Or if at all, do you think it has done that?
I mean, every writer edits themselves to, you know, to a degree.
Right.
I think that I can edit myself to, like, just from a little bit of a higher level, because I kind of know, you know, I've read tons of scripts and I've worked with tons of artists. Like, I have a sense for what artists might want, or how to just write for, you know, a comic book script, for example, like how not to overwrite and how to overload, you know, a panel with like too many actions or stuff like that. But also, I think that because I've gone through the motions, I've worked with a lot of different writers, I can draw from a lot of, like, I've seen how different writers work differently, and what works for them, what doesn't work for them, you know, where your personality is injected, but how much, like, a lot of writing is also, it's just like work, you know, it's just like getting the ideas out as quickly and as concise as possible. So I think it's just like, I've been watching people do it, and good people do it, working with great writers, having the, you know, the privilege of doing that it makes it a little bit easier for me to just sit down and write. Like, it's not the barrier of writing, like that fear of the blank page was at some point just really low for me. Because like the worst that can happen is you write a shitty script. I think that helped me a lot at the start. Because there's also obviously like I'm about to step into the ring, you know, with writers out there, like, you know, name your favorite writer, like these people who've been writing, you know, comics for 10, 12, 20, 30 years. It's intimidating, but at some point the editing part of your brain is just like, you know, it's what I would tell a writer who's having trouble with a script is like, just get it down on paper, we'll take a look at it, and if it sucks, I'll let you know, and then we'll figure something out.
Right.
So I think just like imagining like not having worked in comics, not having been an editor, and then trying to sit down and write something is probably you know, more scary, just because it's all fog of war ahead of you. Like, you have no idea what's happening. Which is why it's always nice when, you know, people reach out or write into Letters page and they're like, hey, I really want to do this. I don't really know how to do it. And you can just sit down and be like, here's how it goes. Getting started is very easy. Doing it right, you know, that takes a lifetime probably. But I don't know if that answers your question. I'm just...
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, because like you said, like creator-owned works, you didn't tend to see a lot of editors on creator-owned works. And I think that's something that's drastically changed over like even the last 5 years. Most of the books I read are not Marvel or DC. They're not the big two. I do read some, but they're in comparison to the gigantic piles of other books that I read, you know, they're not the top books. But there's almost always an editor on my creator-owned books that I've been reading. So except for the extremely indie ones, of course.
Yeah, I think it's just that American comic tradition is intrinsically linked to Marvel and DC, specifically superhero comics in general. And at those companies, both of whom are still one of the, publishing houses that employ a stable of editors, like an editorial department.
Right.
I mean, there are others like Oni does and Boom does, but they're very small, and it's the amount of, if you're going to be working with an editor in comics, likelihood is your first experience is really above where you see.
Mm-hmm.
And at those publishing houses, the tradition of what an editor does is, it's different. I think what we're seeing now, kind of in line with, freelance editing becoming a thing or becoming more of an established thing through primarily Image, is that the job description is kind of what it is in other publishing fields, like in nonfiction or in, like there is always an editor.
Right.
I think specifically with Image, the thing was always just that Image was literally founded by creators who left Marvel and DC, or was it just Marvel? I forget. Because they felt that, editorial was kind of constantly trying to put their fingers in their soup, and they're just like, no, we want, that, meaning an editor meant just creative, stifling, just creative, censorship. And I feel like that we're still kind of trying to shed that interpretation of the job when an editor actually ideally isn't working against the writer. That would be stupid.
Yeah.
Working with them, understanding, like having a discourse, and that also means that an editor needs to know when to step back and when to just let people run buck wild. But from a creator standpoint, it means that you need to feel comfortable with your editor. You need to be able to, first of all, stand your ground, argue for your idea, even if you're getting pushback. And also maybe sometimes, have a conversation, have it be like, I argue a lot with writers, especially like when you're arguing about character, like it'll get heated, but that's all part of it. Like I've never seen a comic be worse because we put more thought into it on the front end and argued more for it. And, that's another thing that as I'm writing and editing, you do put on different hats, and you kind of switch into different zones. But especially because I'm writing now as well, I want, if someone hires me as an editor, I want them to feel comfortable and confident that I'm not going to like try and, and lay my cuckoo's eggs in their nest. Like I'm going to write my own stories, but I'm also, personally and professionally interested in helping people tell theirs. And that means, understanding them and learning about them and where's the story coming from? Like, why do you want to tell this? There's usually a reason. It's not like people just sit down and are like, I'm going to write, a 500-page like epic about something I have no real interest in. It's like, there's a reason you're into this so much that you're making a comic, because there's really easier ways to be spending your time.
Yes.
So that kind of stuff is fun, just working with people, understanding them, helping them, tell a story, get it down, and get it down in a way that they feel that the reader will understand. Like everyone wants to be seen, like you want a part of you to be in the art that you make and the stories that you tell. And I think an editor is an important, like facilitator of that communication.
Oh, maybe sometime you can help me with my comic that I've been writing. I'd love to pick your brain sometime when we're not doing an interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also wanted to ask you what you read for fun, like not work related, but like what kind of interests you, or maybe you don't have time for that. That happens too, which I totally understand.
It happens a lot. I read anything. I read a lot of novels. I read nonfiction. I read comic-wise. I read like as far away from the kind of comics I make as possible, just because it's hard to switch the brain off. I read a lot of manga. It's kind of my preferred go-to. A lot of older stuff. I try to keep tabs on. Honestly, I don't really keep tabs on anyone anymore. I just like go to there's like Japanese bookstores here in New York where I live, and I just pop into like old Japanese used bookstore and just see what's interesting. Like I try to just go in as blind as possible. But yeah, recently I've been trying to read more, just because I've stopped reading. Like last year was really busy, and you stop reading for pleasure, which is always a problem because it's like not eating anymore or something. So I've started like making time for myself to read more. but yeah, just across the field. Like I don't keep up with anything really.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of run into a bookstore and see what's interesting, or go into a library and pick out a stack.
I'm also a big manga reader. What are some of your favorite series?
All time. It's a lot of classics. Lone Wolf and Cub, I think, is brilliant. Akira is brilliant. Domu, also like the lesser known. Otomo is brilliant. I love horror manga. Like Kazuo Umezu, Drifting Classroom is brilliant. Anything by Junji Ito. Not anything, but most of the stuff by Junji Ito. I love Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind. I think is brilliant. There's more weird stuff, but there's like all these 60s and 70s manga dudes that I really like that never really got translated either correctly, or you have to really look for them.
Right.
There's a guy called Kaze Shinobu who's brilliant, who's really weird. He did an American thing once. It's called Violence and Tranquility. I think it was for heavy metal. It was really weird. He did a manga called Ryu, the Strongest Man on the Face of the World.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
It's probably like made its rounds like in, I don't know, Tumblr blog posts. It's about a dude who's so strong. It's like the Grindhouse One Punch Man. Like he wears this mask because he's so strong.
Oh, okay.
And he's so strong that God like can't allow him to exist, so he sends Jesus to combat him, and Jesus resurrects Bruce Lee and Miyamoto Musashi to fight him. It is
that sounds so great.
So amazing, and has like I don't know. It's a kind of comic book storytelling that like no one does anymore. Like it's almost non sequitur bonkersness. Today everything's like very narrative driven. Not that doesn't have a narrative, but
have you read Dorohedoro?
No.
That's one of my current favorite horror series. It's 21 volumes and it's still and counting. There's more coming out. But yeah, that's probably, if you like horror and like absolutely insane story, like something that's just it's not linear, it's like not some predictable, it's just crazy.
Awesome, I'll check that out.
It's probably my favorite right now.
What else is there? There's Goodnight Punpun, which is fantastic and heartbreaking, by what's her name?
I don't remember. I know it.
But... sorry, I'm mucking up the. Bookshelf right there.
Oh, sorry, you
Inio
froze.
Asano.
What did you say?
It was Inio Asano.
Okay.
Is a manga artist who is also brilliant. Did the Shinji Gahara holograph, Goodnight Punpun, Solanin. That's really great stuff. A lot of which is translated. I think most of that. So yeah, like talk forever about manga. But I'll check out that Dorohedoro. Recently, I got into a thing which is like it's the most like not brain dead. It's decent, but it's called Hakaiju, which is just it's like your standard. It's funny because there's so many manga that are like your standard issue high school people that get thrown into whatever.
Yes.
Harem love affairs, teddy bears from space. Like it's always the same kind of cast of characters. Like any soap opera usually has the same archetypes. But this one is like standard issue, like Japanese high school kids. But they're like Tokyo is attacked by like every kaiju ever at once.
Okay.
So, like horrific. Like it's more like Cloverfield as opposed.
Oh, okay. Like monster, like serious.
Oh yeah, like they're terrifying, and
they
immediately like just destroy everything, and it keeps getting bigger. Like the scale is out of control. It's so good. Like you can tell that the I forget the artist's or creator's name, but you can tell that he just wants to draw monsters, and like his people look really weird. It looks kind of lazy. Like their arms are super long. Everyone's kind of gorilla-ish, but it adds like a real like everyone's hectic and screaming all the time.
Okay.
And that book is fantastic.
What was it called?
It's called Hakaiju.
Hakaiju?
Yeah.
Like Kaiju?
Hakaiju, yeah. I think a double K.
I'm just writing it down because I want to check it out.
Yeah, because it's like it's like teen drama interspersed with just like whole cities being flattened and monsters getting bigger and bigger, and then they're like, oh, that's the biggest monster, and it turns out that monster is just like a dandruff flake of an even bigger monster. Really, really awesome. Enjoyable stuff. Like just every issue, you get a new monster, you get new like people screaming, then they'll stop for a second and like talk about, why isn't Senpai looking at me? It's just hugely, hugely enjoyable. Real good stuff. Great for mutes and in general.
Cool. I'm doing a manga order soon because I have to buy some birthday presents, which gives me an excuse to buy myself manga. So awesome. I'll put that on my list.
If you've never read, and I know that it's just because of this weird ass movie trailer, but the original Battle Angel Alita is like one of my favorite comics of all time.
I've never actually read it. I think I've read bits and pieces of it over the years, and that's kind of like how I am with like a lot of sci-fi manga. But yeah, I think I've never read it from top to bottom, and it's probably much easier to get now than it was.
I mean, I think they're reissuing it, or I would imagine that they would reissue it. I mean, he's been still circling back to talks about editors. The original run famously ended with a story that the artist was not happy with at all, and he wanted to do something, but his editors at the time,
right.
And lo and behold, I think the original is brilliant. It's a great art. It's great. One story. It's long. I mean, it's like 6 or 7 volumes. Viz Comics put it out at the time. I think it would be with Kodansha now. But he kept going. I mean, it's the whole last order, which is now I think like 3 or 4 times as long as the original.
Oh wow!
And it's like. Talking about non sequitur, like his art style has just it gets better there's just artists who get better every single time they do something. There's like him, there's the guy who does Blade of the Immortal, like every single book they do is better than the one they did before, which is kind of crazy. But he completely lost like the ability to tell a story, like a coherent narrative. It's just like it's almost like Buddhist scripture fight sequences where it's just like philosophy with fists, which sounds awesome.
Not very linear at all.
I like the original because he's very clearly just like riffing off Blade Runner and RoboCop, but like in his own weird future world, which is like very H.G. Wellsy, where the poor literally live in the junkyard trash heap of the city in the sky that is like just raining garbage down on them all the time. It's brilliant. Like I love it so much. Anyone who hasn't read that, it's like super high octane comics, and he's one of the best artists on the planet, probably.
Nice. Yeah, I'm still a really big fan of my girly manga as well, my shouju, or soju, not soju.
Soju manga is also a thing, I'm sure.
I'm trying to
shouju.
Say, you know what I'm trying to say. I'm thinking about soju right now. Anyway.
Good. Stuff is dangerous.
But so like some of my favorites. I'm actually rereading Ranma 1/2 right now.
Oh, I love that so much.
So good. Because it was only one of those kind of series that I'd read bits and pieces of over the years, like when it was serialized and stuff. Because it was originally
that's a really big one. It's crazy that no one talks about Rumiko Takahashi in general, but about Ranma, because that was a really big one because it was one of the first ones that were coming out back in the day when we were kids. Because back then you were like kind of dependent on what was coming out. You didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
But manga just also wasn't that big of a thing. And it's really interesting for me to go back now and see what publishers were going for back then, because it's not what they would be going for right now. Obviously they went for their go-to classics, but some really weird stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know if you remember. I used to get floppies of Record of Lodos Wars,
yes.
Like stuff like that, and like a couple floppies of like early Escaflowne, which is stuff like kind of like the different Gundams and stuff that were out at the time.
Yeah. It was exciting. Again, you like had no idea, and comics were so all of a sudden like manga was so different.
Mm-hmm.
And you got so much of it too, which was awesome.
Yeah, it's really different.
Sorry, I keep looking at my. Well, I have like a whole old manga thing here that I wanted to pull out. It's fine.
You can if you want.
No, it's fine. I keep like running to the bookshelf and interrupting the stream. I haven't read any good shoujo stuff in a while. I think the last thing I read was Nana, and that was like 10 years ago. But Nana was really good. Soju Shonen would be like a manga. It would be like a kid who's got like an amazing palate, like an impeccable wine taster, but he's too young, so he has to like I don't know. I'll work on it. It's the great thing about manga is you make a manga about basically anything.
Oh yeah, I remember reading Addicted to Curry a long time ago, and it's literally just like it was in probably Shonen Jump or something, but it was literally like a couple of pages about like a little curry shop in Japan, and then it would have a curry recipe at the end of each episode and silly things. My favorite is still probably Angel Sanctuary as far as that goes. I have all of it. I reread it from time to time just because I don't know. I'm a sucker for punishment, I think, because I always feel like I'm being punished when I read that book, but I love it. So weird.
There's a lot of punishment manga is also a genre, I'm sure. Yeah, there's got to be like an algorithm, like an artificial intelligence can like create an algorithm for you just give a buzzword and it creates like 20 volume manga with like all the character beats and all the ups and downs and lefts and rights. But you can just throw in anything. Like I'm sure there's a manga about like golf caddies who know more about like Scotch whiskey than their rich, golf patriots or something.
There's like a bunch of like manga about badminton of all things. That's what I kept seeing all this badminton manga, and I'm like, that looks awful.
Not just one; it's a genre.
Yeah,
I bet I bet like their badminton tournaments are like more awesome to read than like superhero fights because they just stage it better.
Oh, I'm sure. That's like when
what's it called? What's the badminton thing called?
You mean the racket or the bird?
The bird, is it a bird?
I thought that's what it's called. I haven't played badminton since I was
have like a panel with like a million speed lines and it's like exploding like a nuclear mushroom cloud is like coming out of it.
Well, it's so funny because like rereading Ranma, there's like this whole ridiculous like 3 chapters. So I think it's longer than that. It's almost an entire volume of an ice skating match, but it's ice skating fighting, and then apparently the rink just happens to be this really special rink that is actually a pool, and so I think it's Rama breaks the ice and they all almost drown in the pool. It's just like, this is so ridiculous.
That comic is amazing. If that came out today, people would like couldn't stop chucking lasers at it. I actually don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I think she's like one of the most unsung like champions of manga. Not just Rama. Like you've got Mizumi Koku and
Inuyasha and. I still love Inuyasha.
Yeah. She's fantastic. And Inuyasha was on TV for so long.
I know. They made like a bajillion movies too. Yeah. I think I've seen one of them. I was just like, I don't have the patience. I don't watch anime anymore. I just read. So
those days are over.
Yeah.
There's more now than ever. I don't know. There's not enough time.
Yeah. No, I agree. But yeah, I guess so we had a little manga talk. That was fun. I did want to ask you one last question, and that was if you're able to talk about it, what, if any, other projects are you working on besides Scales and Scoundrels? Unless you can't talk about it.
Writing or in general?
In general.
Because I also read it. Well, right today, actually, depending on when this is up on your site. Today at Image Expo in Portland, 2 books will be announced that I'm editing, that I'm very excited about, that I shouldn't talk about right now. But they are both.
This will go up in a week and a halch.
Oh, great! So
I have like a big schedule.
Both be announced. You heard it here first. Well, not technically. Rick Remender and Bengal are announcing a book today called Death or Glory.
That Bengal? Yeah.
That Bengal.
I love him.
really, he's fantastic. He's brilliant. The book is going to blow everyone away. I think it's gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous book. It's like a little crime on the road highway.
He's been keeping that a secret then, because him and I talk on Facebook, and he has not mentioned a single peep about it.
He's listened to me. We've kept it under wraps. That's a pretty big deal.
Nice.
But that's really exciting. So they'll be announcing that in just a couple of hours. And the other book is by my co-writer of Shirtless Bear Fighter, Jody LaHoop. I'm editing a book of his with artist Nathan Fox and Dave Stewart on colors called The Weatherman.
Okay.
Which is it's hard to explain. Everyone look at Jody explaining it on the Twitch because it's hard. It's a sci-fi kind of thriller about a weatherman on Mars who is he's like a radio DJ weatherman. Like, he just makes a lot of fun. He's really beloved. But he over the course of the first issue, this is hard to explain. I don't know if I should talk about this more. It's basically he is accused of being the mastermind behind a terrorist attack that wiped out 99% of the Earth's population.
Okay.
People live on Mars. And the question is then, like, imagine an attack so big that literally every human still alive is like traumatized and lost almost all of their loved ones. And then all of a sudden the person who is responsible turns out to be this, or maybe not, who knows. So it's this kind of like Zero Dark 30 on Mars. The style is poppy. It's really fast. It's kind of funny. It's crazy, but it's a really funny book because he's really funny. So that's something I'm really excited for. Nathan Fox is a brilliant artist who people know from. He's been teaching for so long that this is kind of like his first creator-owned book. So I'm super stoked for that. Obviously stoked to be working with Jody. David Stewart is a brilliant colorist. Got Steve Wands on lettering. Got Tom Mueller on designs. Like, it's going to be like a really, really cool book, and that's coming out in June.
Awesome.
Alongside Death or Glory. So my editing card is pretty full right now with new projects, which I'm excited for.
Cool.
And on the writing side of things, I've got some ideas. Like, you get the itis, and you want to write some more stuff, but we're super, dedicated to Scales and Scoundrels and making sure that we can hit our monthly deadlines, and then making sure we get 3 trades out this year.
Nice. Well, that sounds all very awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Looking forward to reading the next Scales and Scoundrels.
Cool. I'm glad. Yeah, I can send you a PDF.
Oh, that's cool.
It's coming out.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I could do it an advanced review for that too, because I like making my little review videos. I do a lot of written articles as well.
Yeah.
But lately I seem to just write about stuff I dislike, and I make videos about things that I do like. It's very odd.
I hope you make a video about Scales and Scoundrels.
Yeah. Anyway, it just seems to be that I had a big rant yesterday. I spent like 3 hours writing this article about sex criminals. And I was like, why is it so boring? Anyway.
Wow, right.
A book called Sex Criminals shouldn't be boring. Anyway, but so that's kind of what I know I'm horrible.
No.
Almost everything, but
the job of the critic is to ask questions.
Yeah, and it was interesting too, like the response that I got back from people. People were like, you're right, it was really, really boring. And I didn't even think that so many people shared my opinion on it.
Right. Well, I mean, isn't that the risk of being a critic, is that every now and again you stumble on something and people are like, you know what? But yeah, I mean, is that the new one? Is that the one? Because it's been on hiatus for a while, right?
Yeah, it just started up again. But I was actually talking about like the series from the beginning.
Oh, from the start. Okay.
Like I couldn't get through the first trade; it was that boring. Which is, even if I really hate something, I'll usually finish it. But I was just bored, and when I compared it to the stack of things that I have to read right now, I was like, this is really just wasting my time and kind of frustrating me. When I have all these other great books that I could be reading, and I was just like, now I have to write a 3-hour article about this because I'm so frustrated.
That's the task you give yourself. Well, I know a lot of people really like it, and you know that's the most important thing. But I would also agree with the like, you have a stack of books. Like, the fear of not finishing a book is something I like jettisoned ages ago. It's just I don't know. I think life's too short.
Yeah.
I just reached a very nice point in a novel I'm reading where I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with this story ending here. And maybe I'll revisit it, but it's okay. Like, there's certain books you need to punish yourself through just to have done so. But I think when you reach for a comic and it's not fun, even if it's not fun, there are comics I love that aren't fun, but you know, they interest me in other ways. Like, I don't have a great time reading Uzumaki. It's terrifying and disgusting and weird.
I love that book.
I love that book too. It's one of my favorite horror comics. But like, I don't you just like movies you love, but you don't want to you don't throw them in. Like, I'm not gonna oh, you know, I feel like Pan's Labyrinth right now. Maybe I'll destroy my belief in that life is worth living.
Yeah.
In the afternoon, like it's pieces of art evoke different reactions. And again, like reading Uzumaki, I'm like weirded out. And it feels strangely like religious almost in a way. Like, oh yeah, there is a God, but like he hates you, and
he's terrifying and not on your side.
Well, it's cosmic horror. It's like, well, yeah, there is like greater beings, but we're ants to them, and whatever it is they're doing like contorts and destroys us and perverts us, and like it's our duty to be kind to each other because nothing else will be. Like, I think that's like Junji Ito's underlying philosophy is like people need to be good to each other because nothing else matters really. Like, we're cosmic dust specks.
I think Junji, like the pinnacle Junji story for me is still the Emeragi Fault.
Oh yeah, that's like everyone.
Yeah, it's still,
that's like because that's the conceivably the weirdest one, which is a tough sell for Junji Ito because he's pretty weird all the time.
Yeah,
but it's such a terrifying. I mean, people love that panel where the guy in his underpants jumps into this hole is meant for me.
Yes.
Who doesn't feel that way? But yeah, like when they come out the other side, it's so weird to think about. I was just talking about this with Pornsack Fischer, who's former Vertigo editor, now launching his first comic book, Infidel.
Oh, okay.
Which is a horror comic, which looks fantastic. Everyone should read it.
Nice.
It's not out yet, but definitely give that a review if you feel like it.
Infidel, okay.
I think my favorite Junji Ito story is The Thing That Washed Ashore.
Oh yes.
Because it's not as philosophically weird. It's just terrifying, and also I'm really afraid of the ocean. Like not like the ocean. Like, I love swimming, but like the concept of how deep it is and what things are like in the dark. Like, that shit terrifies me.
Yeah.
The whole story is about that. Like you were trapped in this like perpetual waking purgatory, being digested by a giant sea monster, but you're still able to look out into this like eternal darkness. Like, it's just.
Well, the ocean is terrifying, though. Like, I was reading somewhere years ago that like we know more about the Milky Way than we do about our own ocean.
That's the thing. More about the surface of the moon than about the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, I think that's horribly terrifying. Yeah,
aquatic horror is like the most effective to me. I think like I've seen space, and I've been to space. I've been in space movies enough where like it's like it's fine. Like. But then there's stuff like well, I saw I don't know why, but I saw The Abyss when it was like way too small.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, that movie
messed me. I had some
Like
severe
or drowning
trauma
through the little window, and I mean, like the end, it's aliens. Like I don't care, but like the whole going down.
It was
creepy.
Yeah, and just like when they're both like pretty much just drowning.
Yeah.
Was just like the thought of that terrified me.
Yeah, that's terrifying. There's a I don't know if you play video games, but there's a video game.
Oh yeah.
Soma.
Oh, I know it, but I haven't played that one.
Yeah, Soma is like almost broke me.
Really?
That game is really terrifying. Also because it takes place underwater station, but it's also honestly, it's like one of the best games I've ever played. Like from a story, it's like the premise and the execution are like second to none. It's really, really, really good. And also terrifying. It's like I don't know. I feel like I finished it like barely. And then after a while, I was like, "Who's talking about this game? It's so good. It's like bananas good." Anyway, that's my recommendation for the video game Soma. Bananas is good.
I'm playing the prequel to Life is Strange right now.
Cool. How's that?
It's good. So far. You basically, as my friend put it, you get to meta nerd because you get to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons in the game.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that was like my favorite part so far.
You get to rewind time and cheat at it, like if you.
I haven't gotten that. There's been no rewind time yet in the prequel.
That was that was the skill you had in the first game.
And I'm assuming that's coming at some point. I haven't. I'm only in like chapter 3. I just started it. So
maybe they chose something else. That was a good game. I like that.
Yeah, it's cute.
Cool.
But
lots of stuff out there.
Well, I don't want to keep you all day. I know you probably have tons of work to do. Thank you very much for talking to me about all your work and everything coming up. I'm very excited for more. As I told you, this will be up in about a week and a half. I have a schedule with my creator interviews now. Cool. So I just did 2 before you, so then you'll be after those ones. So yeah.
Thanks for having me.
And yeah. I hope you have a great day.
You too. Take care. Cheers.
All right. See ya.